We spent a lot of the past week going over the platforms that the leaders have announced, going over what people are promising for the Monday election. I'm here to walk you through a bit of what we see in each of these platforms. But I think it's really important to note that these didn't actually come out from the three main parties until after the debates. Normally, we go into the English and French debate with a better sense of what policies are on the table, how much they're going to cost, and probably the most important, where is this money actually going to come from? This time around, there really wasn't that amount of transparency. So we'll start with the Liberal platform here. It mentions the tariff war and tariffs about 15 times each. It's a major focus here, how to shape up to US President Donald Trump's sort of economic war against Canada. Both the Liberals and the Conservatives are estimating about $20 billion of revenue from Canadian counter tariffs. The Liberals are pledging to give this to affected workers and affected industries. The Conservative approach is much more about a tax cut and targeted aid to specific companies. In the Liberal platform, there's a lot here beyond the tariffs. There's talk about how to structure diplomacy, there's talk about reconciliation, there's different environmental measures here. There's quite a lot in this 67-page document, and that's actually sort of been a bit of a political liability for Mark Carney. You know, he's been accused of being a bit too wonky, to focus on different policies, when we know that the Liberals have gone up in the polls a lot by keeping the focus on Donald Trump and his tariffs. One of the more interesting parts in the platform is a cut on the growth of the federal government. So trying to contain that cost of government spending, of the bureaucracy, try to keep it to a 2% rise every year instead of a 9% rise that we've been seeing, more recently. The main thing that Carney's had a lot of criticism over is how to structure the budget. He's saying we should focus on the actual operational expenses and then the investments in Canadians. The opposition is saying, that really doesn't wash when you've got $225 billion projected in deficit over the next 4 years. That's compared to the Tories, who have closer to about $100 billion projected over the next 4 years. The Conservative plan focuses a lot on cost of living. There's a lot of affordability measures here that are aimed at getting groceries to be less expensive, housing to be more affordable, that sort of thing. There's lots of talk here about slashing government spending, sort of containing the growth of the bureaucracy, going beyond what the Liberals have been talking about here. There's also different initiatives like having a free trade and mobility agreement with Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. That could mean having Canadians work in those countries and vice versa, as well as having more trade between them since we have shared values. There's talk here about cutting woke ideology in the federal bureaucracy and in federally funded research grants. That actually wasn't in the draft that we got on the platform launch. It was in French, it wasn't in English. The party has now added that to the platform, saying it was just an editing mistake. There's lots of talk here about the middle-class tax cut as well, but what we found out was that it's going to be phased out over 4 years. So instead of an automatic save, it's more of a gradual kind of phased-in effect on the pocketbook for Canadians. One thing to note about the Tory plan is it has a lot of photos. It's 30 pages. That's less than half what the Liberals are. And there's a lot of Pierre Poilievre. There's him hugging a grandma here. There's a lot of him with his wife. That took a bit of criticism on the internet. We have the NDP platform proposing a lot of what we've heard about in recent years. There are some new measures. There's talk about mental health care from the government. There's talk about an electrical vehicle rebate that would see double the rebate for Canadian-made electrical vehicles. There's talk here about rent controls and cracking down on practices like rent evictions. The biggest thing in the NDP plan is the revelation of the wealth tax that they're planning. The New Democrats now say it should be about $22 billion a year in revenue that they're looking to get by taxing richer Canadians. It's on a sliding scale based on how many millions you have. But that's really the first time we've had a sense of how much money do they expect to generate through their platform. And lastly, the Bloc Québécois and the Green Party, they both have their platforms out in March, way before the debates. The Green Party is the largest by far. There's a ton in here about pretty much every department, about very specific policy measures here. It's a pretty big comparison to the Bloc Québécois, which obviously only focuses on Quebec. But even then, there's talk about how to structure foreign policy, what a fair tax system is like, and there's a lot in here about public safety and gun crime.